Hello, Billy the Artist here, back with another how to draw video, and today we are doing You Must Not Be Named. Yes, we're doing Voldemort. Anyway, we are doing the Dark Lord. At last, you've asked for him for a long time, and we're doing him just like you asked for these wonderful people from the world of Harry Potter. So we do check out. Anyway, before we go any further, like and subscribe, tick the bell to be notified when new videos are coming. I am aiming to do one Harry Potter video a week for the next few weeks. I might try and do some more in the... I've got loads to do, so but I'm having a blast doing all of these. You asked for Draco, we have done Draco. You asked for Snape, we have done Snape. We have done Sir Richard Harris playing Professor Albus Dumbledore, the headmaster of Hogwarts. Check the Harry Potter in the cards and in the description. Link to some of the individual videos, but the link up there is to the Harry Potter playlist. There are over 30 already, and Lord Voldemort will be added onto it soon. But these videos were great fun to do. We will be doing more of the Harry Potter characters. Like I say, I'm trying to do one a week. Anyway, there's Harry, so do check him out as well. But also we have Billie Eilish. That's been really good. It's gone down really well to help people. And I've also recently done the DS, the directing staff from SAS Who Dares Wins. All 5 of those fellas are done. Check that out. Do enjoy them, do enjoy your drawing, and do share. But we will be doing Voldemort today. But again, I am showing you these grids. We are now using this 2cm grid. Link in the cards to the video where you see me actually laying it down. And just like we have Harry, this is a lesser grid, so again, the DS, I've done them with the slightly lesser grid where I've divided it into the page and halfway and then divided each of those quarters into quarters again. It's just a reference tool. It helps with your drawing. But these 2cm grids really help you to build up and develop. Now, I do have the trusty 2B pencil. Do remember, I also have these. These are pencil extenders. So when your pencil gets too small, you can stick them in them, and it just gives you a little bit more help. Now, when I'm smudging, I do use a piece of kitchen roll, but I also use these paper smudging sticks. Now again, when these get too small, you can't do anything. Now this is just a pen holder and a dip pen and ink for like old cartoons and comic books, how they used to be done. So I use one of those, and it allows me to pop that in and carry on using it. I mean, you can see that is tiny. That's really tiny compared to how it starts off. So again, this is just basic techniques that you can use and utilize in your drawing. Now again, for rubbing out is not to just correct mistakes. I use mainly a putty rubber and the Staedtler Mars plastic. These are the ones. This is a Dale Rowney. These are Staedtler Mars plastic hard rubbers. Now again, for more direct, I've got a Mars plastic and a pen, and you can just extend it and reduce it down, and that's just a great tool. But for more detailed, I've got this Derwent electric eraser, which is brilliant, and it just spins the nib, and you put little tiny lengths of the eraser in there. That goes in, and you pop that inside, and then it spins, and that's a great little tool. We use that on Aunt Middleton. So I actually bought some more of those. I don't know, like I say, the one that was in it had just gone off, it had gone hard. But there is also, like I say, this is my putty rubber, the Dale Rowney. This is Faber-Castell. This is their putty rubber, different makes. This feels like blue tack. It's really squidgy, and I don't like that one. Again, it's personal preference. You get used to using certain materials. Really lovely, really soft, great for very gentle, because you can knead it very fine, but it doesn't hold the point. Just with the way I do my drawings, not my favourite. Now you can see this is kneadable, and you can bend it and squidge it, but it doesn't start like this. That's what it starts like. Actually, you can see there, quite clean. In fact, really clean. So the difference is startling. It goes this colour because when you use it on your drawings, it actually picks up the pencil off the paper and eventually becomes dark. And it gets to a point where using this will actually leave marks on your paper and not take them off. So I will be starting to use this soon, probably on the next one or the one after, but very soon. But because of the way the Dark Lord is, I may well be using this because of certain things in the drawing that we will be dealing with. Again, that's the box that the Dale Rowney comes in. I buy the small ones because they're just the size that works. You can get them larger. And they also do one that is, this is called kneadable, but they also do one that's called firm, a little bit stronger in texture. So again, little overview there of some of the materials that I use. So we're now getting ready to crack back in, but do check out the How to Draw Portraits playlist as well, and the general How to Draw Portraits. I'm just specialising in doing human faces and even the bodies. So like with the Ant Middleton and Jay Morton, there was half a body. So enjoy those. Do share them out. That's going quite well. People are really enjoying doing the drawings. People are tagging me. Do use the hashtag Drawing with Billy. Again, it's just good fun. People are tagging me on social media. Check out my social media. Then you'll see all the work that I am doing. But now we're going to prepare and get on with the Dark Lord at last. So anyway, here we have this 2 centimetre grid. So I'm just going to move these 3 lovely people out of the way. And here we have the blank paper. And we've got this 2 centimetre grid. Now again, check out the banner. The link was earlier for the video showing me laying this down, but all the dimensions for this are in here. This is a piece of A4 cartridge paper. It's just smooth cartridge paper. I've used this particular paper, it's a little bit cream, it's not pure white, for goodness, 30 years. Dale Rowney, red and yellow, 150 GSM, smooth cartridge paper. Now I've put this grid down so that you can see it. I keep saying this all the time. So that you can actually see the grid and the workings out and all the drawing. Because I want you to develop your skills. That's why I do this. Because I just love sharing these techniques, demystifying drawing, making it accessible. So I use the same techniques as I use in the dead simple cartoon drawing. So Toy Story, The Incredibles or The Simpsons. These techniques I use right the way through to my full high-end oil paintings and high-end drawings that I've done of motorcycle subjects and other art. So do enjoy the process of drawing. It's a joy to actually create with pencil. And know that it's going to take a long time. I've now been drawing for over 40 years. It takes a long, long time. But again, back to the grids. So we've got this little 5mm border all the way around. The reason is because this is my centre line, 105mm. A4 paper is 210 across by 297mm down the side. And again, if you check out, if you've got a sheet of paper that's bigger, in the video about laying the grids down, I show you how you can actually lay this down, this A4 size, on a piece of paper that is bigger, so that you've got the same to work with. Anyway, do check those out. Another great technique for laying the grids down, keeping your paper tidy and clean. So, this 105 is the centre line, and everything else works around it. So we've got 25, 45, 65, 85, 105, 125, 145, 165, 185, 205 across, and it goes all the way down to 285 at the bottom here. And this is the grid that we use for the reference points, and it makes it easier to draw the shapes down. Now again, check out How to Draw Anything Part 1. You can draw anything from a bird, a bee, a flea, a tree, a horse, a house, or anything else. That's what I've said in that video that's been up there now for about 6 years, and it's helped lots of people, and it's been really, really good. Now, do check that out as well, because I'm going to use these shapes on top of this. Now, you can just use the shapes straight onto the paper, but I'm trying to help you to grow and develop your techniques. So anyway, I am going to use for the last time this 2B pencil. because I just won't be able to sharpen it. It won't go in the sharpener anymore, and I do have that electric sharpener, which is good fun. So anyway, now we are going to come in and draw the Dark Lord. So the top of his head is just to the right of the 105 line. Now we've got this interesting, again, it's not just a straight portrait, we've got his hands on. You might think this is quite complex. It looks it, but it isn't. This is where the lines really help you, because they're reference points, and eventually you'll be using shapes, but you'll also, basically, it's in some areas you might even do a dot to dot. But we've got the top of his head here, just to the right of the 105 line. Now he's like a big egg. His head, and you can see, as I said, dot to dot, you've got this 145 to 45 line. Just inside there, we've got the corner of his head, and then it comes down a little bit down to where his ear is. So his ear is down across, in between these little two squares, and basically I'm just drawing a rectangle. So there's a rectangle there, and really you could even do a D, a capital D, that's inside, and that's where his ear is. And inside the bottom square there really is a little capital D, and that's where the entrance to his ear is. And then there's another D, which is the kind of flappy bit over the entrance. And that's dead simple, really simple shapes. So again, I'm going to come over here just to the side of the 85 line, and we've got another little rectangle. And so we've got this rectangle here that comes down just above the 105, and it's a slim rectangle, and that's his right ear. And then we can see, again, like little dot to dots. But I'm just going to draw an egg shape through those little dots that we put down. And there, it's literally just the top of an egg. The Dark Lord's head is a boiled egg. Let's face it, he has no hair, he has no eyebrows or anything else. So it just makes it really, really simple. It's a boiled egg. So there you've got that simple construction line. Now again, he has no nose. So you can see above his ear, below the 65 line, either side of the 105 centre line, we've got these tiny little slits. So normally where you would draw a triangle on, he's got these tiny little slits for his nose. Dead simple. Now, he does have the crease from the side of his nose coming down here, and you've got this shadow, but there's a triangle there. So I'm just drawing a slight curve, and that's going to be all of that shadow there. You can see the definition. Now, his lips, his top lip, we've got this shape here. It's just like an upturned banana, and that comes through the 85 line. And the bottom part of his top lip above his teeth is there. So you've got this little banana shape, and then you've got a really slim banana there. And then here to the underneath his bottom lip, you've got his jaw. We've got a little rectangle of shadow. The bottom part of his jaw curves around, because his head's tilted up slightly and he's kind of looking down at you. And then we've got a little circle. Again, that's the front. If you imagine the side, a line there, that's a kind of D shape. And then we've got this little triangle of shadow that comes across. And now here, we've got, coming off this line, you can see we've got a triangle there created by his cheek. Now his eye, it's just like a big kind of leaf. So where his eye is, we've got this huge leaf shape. Almost a bit like a paisley, but it's pointed at this end slightly. And then his eye socket goes further over, and that goes up and over. And then his eye completely is, I'm just going to put a little kind of rectangle in and then curve that over. So again, the same on this side, we've got a kind of ellipse shape for this eye. And that's all inside, just goes over the 85 line. But we've got a nice simple ellipse shape. And then there's a kind of triangle of shadow that goes off up to the top there. And in fact, he's got a couple, there's a little egg shape as well. Knobbly bit that goes right over. And then his eye inside here. So we want the top part of his eye is a rectangle, and then we've got the curved part for the bottom part of his eye. And there you can see we've got a simple set of shapes that have actually given us a good face shape. Now, his hand, we've got, it looks complex. You've got a hand pointing out right in front of you, filling up a large part of the page. But in reality, it's really simple, and I'll show you. So now, we're going to come down, we've got between the 145 and the 165. And so I'm just drawing a line across, and it's a bit like a box. And so here we can go up, and then his knuckles at the top. So there we've got a simple box shape, and we can just put a couple of diagonal lines in across. So you've got a triangle down the bottom, and that's going to be the curve that's going around. And then we've got his fingers. So from the top, and his finger has three parts, then goes up to the nail. Now we could just draw in one long rectangle. So there's one rectangle shape, but we've got where it joins the hand, then here, just drawing a line in, and then just underneath the 85 line, we've got another line, and that's the crease. But I'm just going to draw slightly different angled rectangles. And then right at the top, we've got this lovely curve. His finger just kind of comes up past the halfway point, and we've got this lovely curve of his nail. And there, if you see, it's like a D that's fallen backwards. There's the line and the D just on the shapes that we've put. Now, his next finger is a little bit more bent. So here you can see the first part of his finger comes to the 165, 105 line. So I'm just drawing a rectangle. And then we've got another rectangle, which is his knuckle, and that actually goes through his ear. And then we want another rectangle right to the end of the finger. And we can just indicate the crease, and you've got a tiny little bit of his nail. Then we've got the third one. Again, little rectangle. And then we can see that the end of his finger is on this cross point of the 185 and 125. So I'm just going to draw a circle. That's the end of his finger. And that's like a tube that's going back. So there, you've got a cylinder. If I draw the circle at the other end, you can see a cylinder. And again, in How to Draw Anything Part 1, I show you just drawing boxes, triangles, squares, rectangles, cylinders, cones. And that's another finger. So this last one is very straight. So here I'm drawing a little cylinder, circle, little ellipse, and then down past the 165 and 185, another line, and we've got there just a long tube. And then we've got a nice triangle, which is the fingernail. And so there you can see basic shapes making up the fingers on the hand. When we put the detail line on, going over these construction lines, and you would put these down lighter. You know, I'm doing them so that you can actually see these. Now, his thumb. Again, on this end here, we've just got an oval. And so I'm just drawing an oval. That's like the kind of big thumbprint end bit. And then we want a triangle. That comes down. And we can actually curve that part. And we've got these creases in there. We can see we've got a box where we've got that shadow. And then a triangle above it. And then the lines inside his hand. And then finally we want, it's a C shape. It's just dead simply a C with a little bit of a point on. And that's his thumbnail. So there you've just put a very complex hand down very quickly, very simply. Like I say, I want to demystify drawing. I want to make it as easy as possible for you to get these techniques. And then you just keep drawing and drawing, and it builds your arsenal, your capability of techniques and skills grow and develop. So now we want these lines coming down. So this is coming down to the 225. This is his robes. So we've got a line there coming off the side of his wrist. And then this comes down, and then kicks across there. Another one kicks across there. And we've got the robes coming off behind him at the back. Now his neck, we've just got a line, but you can imagine his neck's just a big tube. So now we've got the highlight on his robe that's coming off on the right hand side of his wrist. And again, that just curves all the way down to this line at the bottom. Goes, so you can just kind of come straight, oops, straight down. So I am, there we go, that's better. And then we've got another one, it's like a long curving C. But you can see right on the centre line, it's just going over from the 225. It's all just slightly curved. And that goes up and cuts through right on this corner point of the 165, 125. So you can just curve that down and then do one a little bit further outside. And I'm just twisting my pencil because 2B does get a little bit flat. Now here, this side of his collar of his robes, we've got a simple triangle. There's one. And then you can imagine that goes off. You can see it coming round the back of his neck. So you can see that goes to there. So you can imagine where that triangle goes up. And we want that second one. Now again, we'll rub this line out. I just put it in so you could actually see the triangle shapes. And then we've got a little kind of fold line coming down. We have, coming off this corner, we have got another triangle, and it comes down above the 185 line on the 65. So again, you can kind of do a dot to dot. So there's my little mark, and I'm just going to bring that down. Got a triangle to that edge, and then we've got a little bit of a rectangle. Now again, we have what looks like a complex shape, his right hand with the wand. The foreshortening is a great thing, and it's something where people have got their arms in front like this that does seem quite complex, but again, breaking it down into simple shapes. So now, from the 165, which is up here, on the 85, we can see how his wand comes right the way across. And at first, we just want a long, thin rectangle. Then we want a triangle coming down there. We've got the triangle, and we can just put a curve at the bottom. Now again, his hand that's holding it, his top finger pointing. So here now, I'm just going to draw the top of his knuckle. It's just a nice curve that comes through. bends down. In fact, I'll draw a box, same as we did before. So we've got simply a rectangle shape with a circle at the end, and there's his fingernail. Draw a line across, that's where his knuckle is. Here we want another rectangle, and then another one that's coming down past the wand and curves underneath. His thumb is just a rectangle, and again you can just put a couple of circles on it, it becomes a tube, and that curves down underneath, curves back up around. Now his knuckle curves just up through the 45,185 line, and then it comes down. Then we want another rectangle coming down, and that finger goes right the way down here, curves underneath. The nail, just do a kind of oval shape for his nail, and then you've got his finger at the back. We've got a little triangle that comes out, that's going to be his knuckle, and then we want a long rectangle shape all the way down. That nail is there, and that curves all the way down. Now here you've just got a simple C. So I'm just going to draw a capital C that comes down into the dark, and that's like his arm and the robe's coming over the top. Now from here we just want a couple of lines that come down for his robe that's dropping down, and then off the top of the C, in fact I did the one right at the top, underneath the 205, so there from the 205 we want his arm curving out, and I got the top line where we've got the fabric fold, and then the fabric goes over the top, just curves, and then going up over his knuckle to there, and then up to the top. Now there, very quickly and simply, using very simple shapes, we've got Lord Voldemort, the Dark Lord, down from what was a very, very complex image. We've broken it down, and next we're going to actually put the highlights, we're going to put the detail line in. Now I'm just going to try. No, it won't fit, so that pencil is now dead in the bin. Sorry about that, that one's gone, but we have another 2B pencil. Anyway, we shall get the outline down momentarily. That's the next bit to do. Now we are going to put in a much more detailed outline, and we're going to start with the Dark Lord's eyes. So now here we have his left eye within this shape that we've drawn, and we've got the bottom of this dark shape, so we're going to draw it up to this crease. We've got the real dark line that comes down, and then there's kind of a crease line underneath the 65 to 125 line, and then his eye above, you've got the kind of bottom crease underneath the bag of his eye that comes across up to there, and that's pretty flat right on the 65 line. Now we can draw that across and then just curve it up slightly, and then his eye kicks over, and again he's kind of looking down at us a little bit, and so that then curves, and we've got this dark patch right in the corner. Now here we've got his eyeball. We've got the sea of little triangle of white. Well, it's not white, it's in shade of the white of his eyes. And then I'm just drawing a little shape because of that highlight right on his eye there. And so you can tell that pupil is going to be about there. And then we want his eye, it kind of creases down, really creases down. But I'm just going to fill in the dark. And his left eye is much darker than, because of the light that's coming on the right hand side. Now we've got the fold above, and it's kind of just above there and just below the kind of halfway line. Well, halfway in between the squares, between the 65 and 45. And then we get this diagonal, big dark thick line right on that corner. And then the curve comes right down into the corner where the kind of edge of his eye socket, where his top of his nose, or what remains of his nose, is left. And then you get this kind of, it's like a little claw, little pointed claw finger, the crease right at the top. And then coming off from that line above, kind of just goes up and we've got a lot of dark right in that corner, and we'll fill all that in later. Straight away we've got, no pun intended, a focal point for the drawing on his eye. So now, just indicating a little bit stronger the edge of his eye socket, we've got a crease kind of comes down there. Now again, on this side now, we can do the same. By detailing up the eye, it'll give us a really good reference point. So we can see here that we've got this kind of chevron point as the line comes down, and there's a crease that comes underneath the 65 line, and then again just one slightly above it, and then we've got the curve of the bottom of his eye, but it follows that shape up to the corner point right in, and you can see that is kind of in the middle of where his upper eyelid is. And then we want that dark crease right in the corner, and then the top of his eyelid inside, you've got the dark of the crease, and that folds down, and the tops of his eyes are about in the same place, and that curves, and then we've got, it curves down, and then you've got a little line right in the corner of his eye where the crease comes off. And then we want the curve coming up and we can join that up right at the top. Now his eye inside, we've got a highlight on the top of this eyelid, this lower eyelid line, where we've got the dark underneath. And we've got the circle of the outer part of his iris, and then the same on the inside, and then we've got his big black pupil, but just to the right of it, like here, I'm leaving a big shape for the highlight, and then there's a secondary highlight just above it. And then we can put the dark right on the outside. So now I'm just going to come in and pull off some of that pencil right in that corner. And the same for the highlight on his pupil. As he looks down. And making that a little bit more diagonal. Now, above his eye, right in the corner, we've got this fantastic crease on his upper eyelid. That goes right over down into that corner, and then the shape of his eye socket, we can just curve that up. And then here we've got, it's a bit like a sharp S, and then it's kind of the side of what remains of his nose coming down, and then we've got coming across the crease from the side of the remainder of his nose right the way down to where above his lips it would be. And then we just want to curve that out. It's kind of got a little kink there in the centre. It's kind of like a top lip. Now I'm going to put in the dark at the slits of his nostrils, and then the same on for his left nostril. It's kind of pointed at the top and a little bit wider at the bottom. And then coming down from here, we've got the top where the crease is and this dark shadow. That curves down just inside the 125 line. And there's a little kind of kink there, and it goes up. We've got the large dark part, and straight away you can see we're actually getting definition in of Lord Voldemort. Just sharpening my pencil quickly. And so now I want the top of his eye socket. We've got that curve that goes over, kind of just goes up a little bit more, and then there's this dark crease. Again, these kind of just egg shapes above his eyebrows. Well, where his eyebrows would be, but he doesn't have any. So now, right at the top, we've got this lovely point at the top of his head. Now, I'm not going to fill in the background with all black. You can if you would like, but that will use a shed load of pencil and take a considerable amount of time. And we're just concentrating on the Dark Lord. And he is such a wonderful sitter for a portrait. So now we're curving down off the top of his head, following the construction line that we put in. Just curve down, just a smidge inside that little corner point. And then here you've got a slight curve, and then it kinks and comes down on to above his ear. So now we've got this little rectangle where we put Lord Voldemort's ear in. And you can see how that comes across, and it is in the middle of his lips. Well, between the upper part from his top lip to below his nostrils. And that's because you use the reference points and you've got it in the right place. Other times it's like, oh, I can remember when I was learning to draw, it's like, oh, the ear's too high or it's too low, and just by putting the good construction lines down, you can build up your drawing very, very simply. So now I'm going to draw this line out, and it comes over and then starts to curve. And it curves down, and it just comes down, and we've got the top of his finger. So I'm now going to draw this knuckle in. Got a little bit of a kink there. And because we've got the construction lines in, you can just follow your lines that you've done. And I'm bringing the line down and curves around, and the skin between your fingers, that's there, that's that tight bit there. Now this finger, you can see you've got this little diagonal, and it comes up, and then we've already kind of indicated where the creases are. Now we've got the bottom of the ear, we can just increase that up a little bit. We've got a little curve. And then the shape goes up towards the 165 line, and it curves around, and it's above the top of his ear. So that curves, and it comes out, and you've got this tiny little diagonal shape here off the 165 line. Now we've got the crease line that we put in. Now the top of his finger comes round. You can see that it kind of comes over to about there. So we need to just increase that over. And then the knuckle kind of comes out. Just curves out a little bit, and then comes down to the side of his hand, and you can see how that then kicks across to about a third line down. So that's that top finger. Then we can just put in this really nice pointed fingernail. Again, I'm drawing these lines really dark so that you can see them. You don't have to do them as dark as I am. You can just build up your detail with your shading and everything later. So you don't have to draw. It's just that if I draw these lines as I normally would in my portraits playlist, you really wouldn't see the line as in such a sharp way as you're seeing here now. So now I'm going to bring out this finger. Again, we can just follow the direction of the construction line. It comes over, and then we've got the kind of little wiggly shape that comes around. That's the end of his finger, and you can see here it just curves around. Curves around, comes back down, and then curves up, and that's the fold underneath. Then we want a little diagonal line that comes down right to the corner point, the 165 to 105. And then we want a kind of little flat line coming across, and then that goes up. We've got the kind of tendon lines on the shadow, and then here this comes down and then just curves out again where it goes to his palm. Now again, we've got a tiny little slither of nail, and because of all the little squiggly construction lines that we put in, I'm just going to remove those pencil lines inside his nail. And now you can see we've got the hand already starting to come forwards off the page. Now the bottom of his ear here, now we did miss out a tiny little bit of his neck, but because we've got the lines in, we can actually see there's just a little shape there. That's the bottom of his ear coming across, and then his neck comes down, and we've got the bottom of his earlobe and the shadow that comes down there. So here we've got this dark crease where his earlobe touches the side of his head, and that goes up to kind of past the halfway point. Then we've got this D shape of his ear, and that curves up to the top. And then we've got the D shape inside his ear, like the entrance to his ear canal. That comes down. You've got the dark shadow inside, and then we've got this little triangle here, and that's going up to the top of his ear and the fold that comes over. we can just follow the highlight inside, and then you've got a tiny little diagonal, and it comes down, and then all that's going to be dark. Again, you can see how simply we've actually put what are or seem to be complex shapes, and we've got them down quite simply and quite quickly. So now we are going to come down the right hand side of Lord Voldemort's head, and that comes off, and we can just follow the line that we've done. We've got a little kind of shape, and then it just kind of kinks a little bit, comes down inside the 65 45, it's not, sorry, 65 85 45 cross there, and that comes down, and then you've got this lovely shape where his edge of his eye socket is. It just kinks out a little bit, comes down, and then kinks back again slightly through the 65 line, and then we've got this diagonal coming out for his cheek to where his cheekbone is. Now again, it's very light here, you don't have to draw it as dark as I am, but now his jaw comes back. We've got a slight curve in, but it's a little bit more accentuated. So I'm drawing this line darker than you will, just so that you can see it. And his chin comes down, and then you've got that shadow that curves right the way down. Now we want his ear at the bottom. So we just follow the shape coming off. His ears are pretty level. And it curves back up, and then the top of his ear just curves down, curves around, little bit in, and then there's a little curve out, and then back to the bottom of his earlobe. And then here we've got this little kind of teardrop, inverted teardrop shape, and a little bit of shadow there. Just going to sharpen my pencil. And we're now going to do Lord Voldemort's lips. So we're starting in the middle, and we've got this curve that comes down. You can see where it matches with his eye above. And again, just bring the dark down to that corner. We can come out a little bit. We've got a little curve there and a little curve there. That's a bit like a bird, one of those little birds flying, and those are those two teeth. And we can bring the dark line down, and then it goes flat because of his bottom lip, and his bottom lip just curves ever so slightly. It curves, and then it goes back up for the corner in his mouth. And here we want this, the right tooth, and then we've got another little curved shape going in, and it's really dark into that corner. I'm filling the dark in, which are his gums, just so as you've got his teeth showing. Now we've got the top of his lips, so here we've got this V in the centre, and it's just to the right of the 105 centre line, and then that curves right the way down to the edge. We've got those lines for the centre, and then it curves over and right down to join the edge of his mouth. Now that'll all be shaded in, and it's quite dark at the top as well. Now we've got a very slim slither of his bottom lip, and that curves across, and then we've got this lovely crease here at the top of his chin. can just indicate where all of this shadow is. So you've got that pocket of shadow there. And then the curve of the shadow. So here we've got, on the crease of his neck, a curve of shadow there. And then this is all under the 105. So bringing that shadow down there, and then that comes down. We've got a darker shadow part there, and then that goes off to the edge of his jaw. And there we've got quite a good amount of the line down. We're now going to finish off his right hand. So the right hand comes down, we've got this fantastic diagonal, but before we do that I'm going to do this curve of his thumb. That curves over, goes to the end and curves back around, and you got the underneath, and that's the ball of his thumbprint. And then coming down underneath we've got this diagonal construction line, but it's just a little bit wiggly, so we're just putting like the kind of creases on the edge of his skin as it comes down. So where you here, this is where your thumb joins the back end of your palm above your wrist, and that's then going to curve centre of your palm, and then it curves down again and goes up through the 165 line, and that then goes up to the centre part here. Now we've got these fantastic creases in his hand, but the construction lines give us a lot to work on where these lines are going to actually be, so that you're getting them in the right accurate places. And these are just the creases in his hand, and you can see I'm just going where the lines are. So this one goes from just underneath the 125 line to the right of the 145, and that just goes across diagonally, just wiggle it a bit and joins where that finger is. So now we can do this finger. The crease starts here, just curves up and over, and it becomes the actual bottom part of his little finger coming down. And the little finger's got a little curve there, and then there's a second curve for the flesh between his middle knuckle and the end of his finger knuckle, and then you've got the curve coming down to the tip, and it just kicks through and then goes up. And then you've got his nail. So his nail is from the kind of halfway point. So I'm just going to get rid of some of the construction line, and then comes above the 165, so the point is there. Then you've got that teardrop with a sharp point at the end for his nail, and then you've got top going to his knuckle, the outside line that goes up, then we've got some wiggly crease lines for that knuckle, and then that goes up to underneath the second finger, and here we've got this dark shade. So just doing the curve around the edge, the top of the nail that goes there, and then the top of the line goes up, got a little peak, and then it just kind of comes back down, and then you've got the underneath part of the finger, and that curves up, goes through the kind of centre line of the 125 line and curves up there, but then you've got this fantastic fold of skin coming down underneath. Now we've got the curve of these creases and right up in that corner. Finally, we can just put the detail of the thumbnail, and the edge of the thumb just needs to curve, come up and join there. And then we've got this darker shadow inside. And that crease goes up and joins there, right on the 125 line. And then we've just got some simple crease shapes. And here where we put the square and the triangle, you've got these darker lines going up as well. And there you can see Voldemort really starting to come off the page. Just sharpen the trusty 2B pencil, and now we're going to come down and do Voldemort's wand. Now, again, we put in the construction lines quite quickly, and that rectangle was actually just up a bit, so we can just recorrect that, how that comes over. Just moving it over because it wasn't right up to that corner, but we can now bring down, coming towards Voldemort's finger. So the finger just, it comes, we've got the top line comes down, and then the top of his finger curves over, and then we've got this fingernail here. And you can see how that then curves up, and that's the fingernail at the top. And then the shape of that top finger, the line comes up, and then you've got the knuckle that curves over. And we've got this dark shadow line here. Now we've got the top of this knuckle there, and then the first knuckle that just curves up, curves down, and that's the simple outline of the top of those knuckles and that finger around Lord Voldemort's wand. So here we can curve that down. We've got a simple C shape, and there's just 1, 2, 3, 4 little kind of wiggly bits underneath, and then the wand comes down, edge goes up, and then that goes up to there. Now here we've got his thumbnail, so we can just put a little curve, and this is a bit like a D shape, and there's the end of his thumb and his thumbnail. So you can see that the bottom part of it, so imagine like the top comes up through there, you've just got a D shape, and that's his thumbnail. So now the edge of his hand comes around, little bit of a curve, and then his thumb, in fact actually that is going to come through the halfway point. So I'm now just going to rub that out. You see where his hand actually comes through the halfway point there, and the thumb totally comes out, and this top of his finger up here, just remove that off. It needs to come through that cross line. That's better. And this is the whole point of doing your drawing and getting your underdrawing down first. And again, I keep mentioning I put these lines down very dark. If you do these lines a lot lighter, it's not as difficult to actually rub out those little bits that you need to move over. And so now we've got the curve of his thumb, and that comes fact, I'm just going to do this again. Oh, rub that out a little bit. Bottom of his thumbnail comes right down to the 225 and 65 point. So I'm just bringing that D down that little bit further. There we go. And that curves around. His thumb goes up and you've got that shadow that kind of goes across. Then you've got the curve of the under part of his thumb going into the distance. Now, it's just some kind of little shape there coming off the wand, and then we've got a little bit of a crease on his finger. And then we've got this dark underneath the wand. So again, that's a nice simple shape. And here we now want to do the same, bringing all of his hand down. So we're going to do the second knuckle, and we can see that that kind of comes over to here. And we need to push the top of this knuckle over. And then the line comes down and comes to the final little knuckle, comes down and through the 25 line, curves around and out. And then we can bring the dark of that outline down all the way down to this fingernail that's down in this dark shadow part. And so here, coming off this finger now, we can bring, in fact, I'm just going to put in the tip of the fingernail off this finger. So his second finger, you can see just the kind of leaf shape there, and there's a shadow line going across, and that's the tip of that fingernail. And then that finger line, the edge of his finger goes up behind that wand there. And then you've got his knuckle here. And then the edge of his finger, you just put a little wobble in and comes down to that fingernail. Now coming off this knuckle, we've got a long, it's kind of vertical, nearly vertical, comes down to the knuckle, and then that comes across underneath this fingernail. And then we've got the fingernail of the third finger pointing there, and then the edge of the finger comes around. Now we've got this line of the cloak and his arm, his wrist coming down to his, into the shadow underneath the cloak. And again we've got the top of his wrist, curves down, comes down through the 255 line, it kind of goes into the dark, and then we can increase that because you've got a nice shadow. And then you've got these folds on the top, so we want this good crease going over the top. You've got a little triangle of dark there, and then you've got the light fold coming down over the top. And then you've got his cloak going up his right arm. You see how that curves over, goes up. We want to smooth the curve, going up these shapes up to where his collar comes around. Can just curve the neck. Then we've got that shape on the collar, on the edge of his robe, and there's just little kind of lines of his underneath his robes. And then we've got this crease finally here. And that comes down. And there you have a full outline of Lord Voldemort down. So that looks like a very complex shape, but by breaking it down using the grid and shapes, you can then totally put down a very, very complex shape. So like I say, you've got that head, the shoulders and the hands, but the hands are making up the most. In fact, there we go, I've just missed a line. Here's another one. We can just come off the wrist, sorry, his left hand underneath, and then we've got his wrist that comes down, and it comes down through the 165, 165 cross, and then just curves across and comes through. And that's to that fold. And that is all the outline, all down completely. And again, we've got a little shadow that we can indicate there, but we'll just fill that in, and then you can see just the highlight. But we can just fill all of those in, but now we need to just remove. I'm going to hold the paper. I'm going to use my Mars plastic to get rid of a lot of, holding the edge carefully, these big areas. And we can just rub those out quickly. Now I'm going to swap over to the Mars plastic that's in this pen. And I'll just get a little bit of more. Oh, it's just pushing, there we go. It's clicked into place. I can now get these lines out in between these folds from the grid and inside his fingers. This is just giving me a little bit more. Oh, it's just completely snapped off. I'll just try and use that bit. Oh, that's handy. Yeah, the end's just ripped off. There must have been a little tear in it. In fact, I am now just going to use the rubber. There isn't enough to actually grip, but having this in a kind of pen is actually really useful, because whereas the big block rubber, I can't get in and remove these lines very accurately. I would remove a lot of my drawing. I can actually pull out a lot of these lines using this slightly smaller rubber without obliterating my underdrawing. And so this is where using different little bits of equipment, and you build up your equipment list quite slowly over the years, you know, just try different things, and you will end up having things that you use yourself that become particular to your drawings, and you will develop then your own drawing style. And that's the whole point. You might find that you have a particular brand of pencil that you like using. So I've now got all of, well, not all, but the bulk of those grid lines removed. I'm just sweeping off using this big brush. This brush is really old. Had it for years. And it's just great because it just allows me to sweep it off and then tip that into the bin. I sweep it off onto paper that I was resting my hand on. Now I'm just going to come back in with this little electric rubber, because I can get really close into the little bits where even that Mars plastic is too big. Like in there, that's really tiny, but it means I can get rid of all of these little construction lines. And I'm just gently pressing on and it's pulling those off. So I'm just using this now around the edge because it's quite fun. But I can remove the lines that are close to Lord Voldemort's outline, and then now I'm just going to use my putty rubber and pull off a lot more of the grid. That kind of makes it just a little bit arty. I'm not removing it all, I'm just pulling off a lot of the pencil. But you can still see a little bit of the grid, which is quite arty, I think. So now, again, just brushing off all the bits that I've just removed. And then just touching up a couple of the lines where I did take out lines that I didn't mean to. And there we have Voldemort outline ready for shading. That's looking pretty good. I hope you're enjoying this because I'm having a blast. Now we are going to fill in a lot of the tone for Lord Voldemort. Now, because we've got such strong highlights coming in from this side, I'm not going to fill all of it in like we have done on some of the previous drawings. So I'm just going to fill in all of the shadow parts relatively quickly. I'm still using the 2B pencil, and you can see here how we're filling in all down the side of his face, his left hand side of his face. Now we're coming down his well, what's left of his nose, little kind of crease in the centre, and then all down the side of his left of his chin, and you've got this kind of, it's like a wave, you know, like surfers going. You can see the shape there coming down on his chin, and then that goes up on the side of his cheek, coming down his neck, and then just underneath that little part of his neck. Now I'm going back over again, just indicating some of the slightly darker parts for the Dark Lord. Upper lip, darker again on the this side than it is on this side. You can see the light. Then we've got a kind of V shape going up from here, so you've got this kind of crease right between the top of his eyelid and the top of his nose, and then all the dark coming down within that eye socket and underneath, and then the side of his head. Now I'm not twisting the pencil at all, so I'm just using it, getting flatter and flatter. Then we've got that dark going up. Then coming down into his right eye socket, right in the corner. And the shade coming round in corner of that part of his eye socket. Then the smile part. And then we've got some lighter tones all down, coming off his eye, down his right cheek, right down the side of his cheek, right down the side of his jawline, and then his chin. Again, this bulge over his right eye, a little bit of tone going up to the top part of his head. And that comes over, and already you can see we're getting much more three-dimensionality onto Lord Voldemort's head as we just fill in those tones quite quickly. Bottom part of that cheek going up to the side of his head, just around the top of that fingernail. Then coming down, darker shadow on his chin, and it's really dark there. And again, just underneath his bottom lip, the crease going over. And there already Voldemort's head has just really started to lift off the page. So now we're going to fill in his fingers. Got a darker patch right on the end of that finger, and underneath. Coming underneath his fingers. So here it's all, we've got a kind of lighter tone, especially along this finger, than down here. So all of this is a much darker area, but we can fill in this hand relatively quickly. Again, this finger we can fill down, but we've got this strong highlight all the way down, so I'm only filling in about 2/3 of the finger. And we will pull out the highlights using the putty rubber. So we fill in that underneath part of his hand. You've got shadow caused by this finger onto his little finger, his third finger onto the little edge of the finger, darker shadow down the edge of his hand, now I'm just filling in this kind of mid-tone across all of his thumb, going over there. I'm filling in this last section. And even his wrist going into his cloak. And then we want to increase the dark. And we've got these much darker shapes here underneath his hand. So again, I'm just using the side of the pencil, filling it in quite quickly. Bit of tone in the middle, darker on that side. The end of that finger, the crease is coming underneath. Going up to between the middle of the four fingers. And we got the dark of the thumb coming right over. Now finally we've got his right hand. We've got more of a tone there, so the highlight is right on the top. We've got shadow in between the first and second fingers, and we've got more of a shadow coming down the front of this finger right onto the nail. Again, I'm just putting in some kind of mid-tones, I'm not going for the full darks yet. Just so that we're getting the actual shapes and lines and tones in the right kind of place. So we're not obliterating the underdrawing. So that dark comes right up that finger. And we've got a nice little shape of dark there on the top. And then again, the rest down here. So we've got, coming up to the highlight, we've got that nice kind of mid-tone. Same on this side with a little bit of a highlight showing. And then it just becomes very dark underneath. There, very quickly, we've just put in a lot of tone on Lord Voldemort. So now I'm just getting a completely fresh piece of kitchen roll, and I'm just pushing the pencil around, just smoothing out that little bit. Again, you don't have to do this, you can keep it very, very sketchy. This is just something that I really like doing. And it just gives you a really good soft texture to then build upon. Your drawing. And then again, I'm just looking at the shapes. And carrying the tone around where I want it to actually be. It doesn't matter about going over here because we've got to put all the dark down underneath as well. But there you can see it's just smoothed out quite a lot. So I'm going to get a clean piece again. Do the top of the fingers all around his right hand holding the wand and just push some tone up the wand. Now, because of the kind of mottled effect and the veins that you can see in Lord Voldemort's head, that's why I'm not using the absolutely clean putty rubber, because I don't mind about any kind of marks that may appear. So I've just cleaned off his fingernail. Now we're just doing the highlight down the edge of his right hand, coming down to his thumb. We've got a strong highlight up his neck there, onto his chin, just by his bottom lip, coming up over his top lip, just a little line up his nose, that little point in between his eyes, right on the eyelid and where his eyebrow would be. Then we've got down this side, little bits, lines on his cheek, up the side, right next to that crease. And you can see you're just getting slight little highlights in the right places that will guide your tone and building up the detail that we need in a bit. So that's all on his face, just pulling out a little bit on his teeth, coming across underneath his bottom lip, little bit on his chin, that's looking pretty good. So now we want the top of the second finger right down the side. You've got that crease fold just on the sides there, and then within his fingernail at the end, right along the top of the third finger, and then his little finger, we've got just, it's quite in the light. You've got little bits that you can just dapple on the top of the knuckle and along the edge. And right underneath, we've left a little bit of reflected highlight. And then underneath his hand, there's lots of little lighter reflected highlights. So you just use the putty rubber and just dapple it, going in the right directions of the creases, and you get those kind of reflected highlights in the skin. Now, right on the top, got the finger, got a highlight coming down onto that nail, right along the edge, the top of the two knuckles, then down the centre of the second finger, right along the edge, top of the third knuckle, and then the top of his arm, coming down there, and the very tip of his wand. And there you've got quite a dramatic pose already, looking totally three-dimensional. Now that's really, really good. Just sharpening up my 2B pencil. I'm now going to rest my hand on the paper, so as because of the area down here, it's all covered in pencil, and that way I'm not going to smudge too much my drawing. We want to really increase the shapes and the shadows around Voldemort's head and his eye sockets Again, I'm just using the 2B pencil. It is rather dark right into that corner. Corner of his eye is a lot darker. And then dark above the top. We've got a shadow line there that comes up in the corner of his eye socket. Now I'm filling in the darker shade on the eye socket, and then the bit that comes off around the back of his head. Got that crease line there, and we can darken that tone, but you can see it's lighter at the back of his head, so I'm not going right to the edge. Now we've got slight shade going up to the cone part at the top of his head, and there his eyes really starting to come together and look out at you in the menacing way that he does. We've got the underneath part of his eyelid, then we need to really do the dark fold underneath, and then we've got that secondary one just that little bit lighter. Then we've got his shadow coming down his cheek next to his finger, and we can really sharpen up the finger, and that'll give us, with a darker line, that'll give us the line that we need to actually go to. I'm now just filling in this tone coming down the side of his cheek down to underneath his jaw. And then we've got this lovely kind of triangle of shade underneath his bottom lip, and then over his top lip, right underneath the remnants of his nose, and then this dark crease right coming down from the top of his nose down to the side of his mouth. And then we can bring up the shadow around his cheek, and up the side of his cheek up to where the side of his nose is. Now I'm filling down that part, and then he's got this darker shadow between his top lips. That's looking pretty good. Got this little curve and then just adding little bits on top, just gently sketching backwards and forwards. Now that darken his mouth and his top lip. It's much darker on the left hand side of his mouth, but Then you've got this lovely dark patch underneath on his right, and the top of his lip. You've got a nice darker line there, but it just peters off and becomes a bit lighter where it comes down to the corner of his mouth. Just going to sharpen my pencil again. Now I'm going to come and darken up his right eye. That's right in the corner. Then we've got a darker line above. And we can really darken that down. Curve underneath the bottom of his eye. And then this fold of the top of his eyelid. And it's really dark in the corner. And we've got this. So you've got the fold above his eyelid, and then you've got like this kind of secondary shadow above his upper eyelid. And then you've got a third one that goes right up to where kind of eyebrow would be. And this rectangle of shade there. Again, just filling in the shapes, filling in the shading, just carefully coming down across his head, across his forehead, right at the top. And here we've got a nice little bit of shading that comes down from his eye just over the top of his cheek. Now in this crease on the right side, which is the kind of laughter crease on the side of your mouth, we've got this nice darker line as it comes down into this kind of leaf shape. And that, I've kind of come down a little bit too far, but that's okay, just pull it off with a rubber. You can see how that comes down just about to the top part of his lip. And then we can really soften that off on the edge. And that's looking pretty good. Then we've got a little bit of shadow coming down inside on his top, above his top lip. And there's a little point of shadow coming off the corner of his mouth. And the same coming down the edge of his face. Then we've got inside his chin. And there Voldemort's really starting to come together. So I'm just bringing the point down of that shadow underneath his chin. Just increasing that. And down by his ear to the right of his finger. It's very dark. And again, this is all with the 2B pencil, actually in his ear, over the top. And so that's looking quite good, and we're really getting there, building up the detail. So now I'm going to come in with my smudging tool. Again, I'm using the new one. I'm just pushing the pencil round his ear, getting the shades and shapes and up over the top of his head. Just clean a bit off. Using the cleaner part now, coming down the side of his head, top of his eyebrow shape, shall we say. Down his cheek, down the side of his jaw, earlobe on the right, shape above his nose. Again, I'm just pushing this pencil around as if I was drawing with this actual smudging stick. Just wiping some off now. The edge just coming down his neck. Again, just being careful, building up, and we'll be able to just pull some off using the putty rubber in a minute. Across his eye, across the top of his head. Now down his neck here, really press on and push it around quickly. Up the side of his head. That shadow there underneath his chin. I'm just really softening the edges out. Over his top lip. Now you can see we've got a lot of really good darker tone now, but we've lost the highlights. So again, we're just going to come back in quickly. We've got start with the chin, top of the chin there, side of his chin, up the side of his neck, side of his mouth. Just a little ledge below his lip. Highlights on the top lip. A little V across the top of his lip. Down the side. Then by the side of his right nostril, and up the centre of his nose, and then we've got that nice triangle right in the centre. Now just on the top of his cheek, on that side, again you can see that's just really starting to lift off. The top of his kind of eye socket shape, going up onto the top of his head. We've got that reflected highlight at the back of his head, and then it's all kind of mottled in that shadow, so you just dab a bit and you get that kind of really mottled effect. Coming down the side of his cheek. And this is the beauty with Voldemort, because he's so haggard because of all of the horcruxes and dark magic that he's done to try and make himself immortal in the story have caused him all of these problems. And it's why I could do with a bit of moisturiser. So again, right on the top of his head now. And this is what I was really looking forward to with using this rubber, because it's so dirty, it doesn't matter, because Voldemort's skin is so blotchy. Highlights on the top of that eye, then right up into that corner. Then we've got like little highlights on the crease lines. And then up into his eye socket, reflected highlights. And there you can see that's just really given such lovely definition and tone and three-dimensionality to our Lord Voldemort. Again, we've got a slightly sharper line next to the crease, then going up into the corner of his mouth, and then coming down there. That's looking pretty good. Then coming down on off the bottom of his lower lip. And because he's so mottled, it just really looks good. Pull out the highlight in his eye. Then on the edge, on the corner, I'm just smoothing that down again. Just pulled off a little bit too much, but you just smooth it with your finger. Now right up into that corner. That accentuates his eye socket a little bit more. And you got the top of his ear and the side of his ear, just pulling off that tone a little bit. But yeah, this is probably the last time for a full portrait I will be using this putty rubber, but I will keep it for these kinds of effects. So even on other portraits there may be something where I need this kind of effect. Again, I'm now just pulling off, dappling on his chin, coming off to that corner on the side. We've got the stronger darks that we need to put in. I'm literally tearing it in half to try and get as clean a part of the putty rubber as I can, and it's getting a little bit difficult. We've got a stronger highlight at the top there on the back of his head. Now I'm going to use the 2B pencil. In fact, I need to pull off a little bit more. There we go. So now I'm using the flat of the 2B pencil, and I'm just wiggling some lines on where you can see the veins. And we've got, just darkening the shadow there and here. And then you've got this vein going off. I've got a few on the back and the side of his head. Great one there. And then some lighter ones here. Just increasing that little shadow coming down off the side of his face. But You can see we've just put those little lines on, and then I'm going to just get my smudging tool and you just soften the edges, just go over them again, but you soften them, and that's how you get those lovely little vein lines. In Lord Voldemort's skin. So there we've got that stronger shadow for that lump above his eye. There you go, that's looking pretty amazing. So again, just come back in and you can see how we've got that stronger highlight. Now I'm trying to do this with the putty rubber. I might have to use the electric eraser because this putty rubber is so filled with pencil. Now I actually have one more putty rubber left, but I've just ordered some more just so as I've got them in because I'm doing so much drawing and they do pick up a lot of pencil, and I count these as much of a drawing tool as my actual pencils. They're so valuable, they're so amazing and versatile. And there we go, that's looking rather splendid. So now I am going to, if I can find my there it is, 2B pencil, I am going to fill in these fingers and the shadows on the fingers the same way as we did the face. And we need to increase the tone in and around the hand. Just watch, be careful, look at your reference, just keep coming backwards and forwards over the areas that require the tone. So we've got quite a nice dark there. And we've got a lot of shadow underneath here. Yeah, I'm just filling that in quite quickly, and we will go over it with a 4B because there's a lot of shadow to fill in. I'm just smoothing the pencil around. Again, I'm not twisting it, so I've got this nice flat of the actual pencil. It's giving me this lovely tone. Again, just some wiggly lines, the creases, and top of his finger, and then we've got this dark here. So again, the same now down for this hand. But already you can see that hand, the left hand in comparison to the right hand, is really coming forwards after the paper. And we want a nice shadow all the way down the wand, and then we've got a little bit, just careful, inside, and then it gets darker as it comes down. And then we've got these little shapes at the bottom that are very dark, and especially underneath this finger here. Then we've got a darker shape there, and the creases on that knuckle. Coming down to the fingernail, we've got this dark shadow completely engulfing all of the finger. Same for the third finger, and from the third finger to the fourth. Already you can see we've got really good shape. Coming on the hands. And then coming down on his arm, his wrist into this area on his cloak. That's going to be the dark coming down. So now I'm coming back in with the smudging stick. I'm doing these really quickly, and again, if you want to do hyper detail, then just spend a long time. And you can spend as long as you want doing all the detail and all of the creases in the fingers. Smoothing that down. Another little darker patch, again just using the smudging tool to just push the pencil round, and you're getting the effect and the tone of the way shadow and light dapples across skin. Right the way up to the tip of the finger, lightly fill in the fingernail, and we'll clean that off with the eraser in a moment. Now coming down the index finger, and we've got this sweep down. And the thumb, dealing with Voldemort, his hand, some of the creases. We need to come back in with the 4B pencil to really increase the shadows. Then you can see how that's muted and matched the same, but we need the darker ones on his chin and around his nose and his mouth, and again even under his hand, and then all inside his cloak. Bottom of his hand. I'm just going to wipe off some of the pencil. Then around his wand and this finger, and then between the first finger and second finger, indicate the creases in the knuckle, just using the smudging tool as if I was drawing with a pencil, but you get those nice smooth tones right up between the second finger and third finger. Pull the shadow down, same with that finger coming down to the edge in the dark, third finger with the nail underneath, third finger with that dark shadow between the third finger and the fourth finger, and the actual fourth finger itself, and then the right wrist. Just take some of that graphite off. And you can see that I've just literally just filled in that area using the graphite tool itself, the smudging tool itself. Now that is looking rather lovely. So again, we're now going to come in with the 4B pencil before we put all the rest of those darks in. So lightly, because we've got lighter tones here, so I'm filling that in, and then we've got this highlighted part of his robe coming down. Same. I could have just used the smudging tool for this. And then got the lighter tone on the top of his cloak, coming down behind his wand. And the handle need lightening up, but again we can do that. We'll just pull the same as we did with his head. We'll pull that lighter tone up in a little bit. And I'm just filling these shapes in very, very quickly. And you can practice filling shapes in with tone. Just draw triangles, shapes, circles, banana shapes, whatever, semicircles, squares, and then fill in the shading, because I'm not resting my hand on the page at all, so I'm pivoting from my shoulder, and you just get much more fluid lines, and that just comes down to practice. And so now we need to really fill in this dark. I'm carefully coming around this finger, and there's a lot, so this pencil is going to disappear. So I'm coming down underneath the hand where we've got this dark, and then we've got a triangle of dark coming down onto this highlight, and then that curve comes all the way down. So I'm just going to gently hold the paper, trying to find clean fingers, because I'm using this edge so I can't even really cover it with the paper that I would lean on. So now I'm really filling in quickly with this pencil. I'm just pressing on to get the dark in very quickly. And again, this is the 4B. Up by his finger, little finger, and we've got that little highlight there that we can really pull out by doing the dark close to it. Same with this fold here. A little triangle. And then you've got just some little kind of cross-hatching bits. Just to indicate the folds on his cloak going up to his shoulder in the background. And I'm just twisting the pencil to have the sharper points. There you have all of that black coming down. Now we need to do the same, coming down underneath his wrist. Now, I really like pressing on hard with a pencil and getting the burnished kind of glare that you get with the actual pencil on the paper. Some people don't, some people do. I just really like it. And it was just something that I developed from my initial sketching days, really. Not. It wasn't really my student days. I went out and did drawings, sharpening. I did what was called repertorial illustration. So I went into factories and places of work and drew from life, people actually doing stuff. And one of the projects I did was with, or did a few projects with, was Aston Martin cars many years ago when their headquarters was at Newport Pagnell. And so I'd have to sketch really quick, and I replicated that in the studio. So what I would do out live, or even at music events, so I went to sketch big bands and musicians playing live. And so what I would do at the music events, I would try and replicate in the studio, and that's why I do these marks as dark as I do, and I just like it. Again, it's personal preference. You can actually get, and one day I might have a, because again you're just learning all the time, might have an experiment one day and actually get some of these matte pencils. Look at that, that's looking amazing. And have a go, and they fill in the area completely flat black. So just fill in that fold in, sharpen the pencil again. Like I said, this is going to use quite a lot. So I'm now resting, because I want a nice sharp line coming down here. I'm resting my hand to get the sharp line of the dark, of the shadow underneath this cloak fold. And that's got to come all the way down there. There's a lot of black on this. Again, just tightening that line up. Ooh. Did the end snap clean off. So fill that big triangle of shaping. Now, that is very satisfying. Now I'm just going to use, I'm actually using the older smudging tool just to finish off pushing that around. Tone within those folds. So pushing that around a little bit, and then here we've got much stronger highlight at the top, and then on the back side of where the cloak comes over, you can just indicate some of those little highlights on the folds, and the creases just where they come over. Then come back in, just add a few delineation lines, come right down to the line of that finger, where that crease is on the cloak. And coming down here, and the edge again. There you can see we've got just the shapes filled in very quickly. Again, I'm just using, oh, there goes the end again, a 4B pencil and pressing on as quick as I can. And you can take your time. If you use an 8B pencil, it would fill in rather nicely. So here we're bringing the shadow down, caused in between the two folds of his cloak and kind of shirt that he wears underneath the cloak, right up to underneath his thumb. And I'm just filling this in really quickly. And there we can see we've got like a really nice delineated line now underneath his left hand. But we can use the smudging tool to push all of that shade around exactly how we want it. This line coming down on his cloak again. Now, here we got this little construction line in that I didn't erase, so I'm just going to pull that off quickly, and then I'm just going to come in and push the pencil around using the smudging tool. Pick some black up from there. I can push it around. Be careful when I'm getting close to the wand. Lighter at the top where I need it to be a little bit lighter. And then press on darker where I need it to be darker. And that's the thing with the smudging tool, you get a really nice kind of fabric effect. Brilliant for these kind of quick tonal transitions. Now coming down over the top of the hand, got a little bit of dark around the top of the knuckles, and then got a lighter tone coming down there, bit of an edge coming down there. I'm just picking up some more pencil. So now, just squinting my eyes, I can see where I need some darker tone coming down the robes. So I need to just delineate the edge of the robe there, where that comes down. And now we're really filling in up and underneath his hand. Careful around the fingers. Now, here we've got that lighter part. I'm just going to come back in quickly with that electric eraser. Coming off the thumb, so the thumb is actually very dark. We've got that really dark patch coming down. Coming around the edge of the fingers. We've got a darker patch coming down there. And we've got a real dark triangle here. Coming to the fingers, and we know that the fingers are going to have to go much darker. So I'm just drawing the edge of the finger line up. Using the side of the pencil to fill in a lot more down to the edge. I'm not going right to the edge of the paper. And I'm just being impressionistic with these big, sweeping, bold lines now. And then we've got dark under this fold. That fold line comes over the top, and that's all dark. And then got dark underneath the wrist, coming down. And then we've got a lovely dark tone going right up to that collar. There's a bit of dark tone above those fingers, down that edge. And there we've just filled in absolutely loads of Lord Voldemort. So now I'm again pushing a lot of this dark around his cloak, where I need the tone to actually go. And you can see I'm doing the pencil rather than the way my left hand, or if you're right-handed it'd go that way. I'm kind of going in the direction that the cloak is hanging, the way that you would do hair. And that gives you a little bit more reality to the fabric that you're actually drawing. Again, I'm really pushing on. Pressing the tone into the paper. Again, we've got quite a full feature there, and if I tried to fill all of the background in, that would be pretty immense. Now, it would make his head absolutely leap off the page. Just by putting the dark in around his head. And you know what? I think we might just do it. We won't fill all of it, but we will fill in around his head rather quickly. I'm pushing that pencil all the way around. Need to just crisp up the tip of the wand. Now we've got all on his hand at the front, and you'll see as we just pull this off a little bit, his hand is just going to leap off the page, as you can see there. Then we've got a highlight on the top of his knuckles, coming down the centre of his hand, top of that finger, top of that knuckle, and the top of his wrist going underneath that fold. And we can just indicate some highlights on the edge of his cloak. Same on that top part, the collar coming down right on the top part. So now I'm just pushing some of the shade around Voldemort's fingers and on his cloak. Again, I'm just using the drawing tool, the smudging tool, as a drawing tool. And just filling the tone in as and where I need it. When we put the final darks in on his hand, it will really make it stand out. Just the centre of his wand, darken that up around the edge, pull up the highlights on the tip, and then coming down the body of the wand. And here, the little bit of wood sticking underneath where his finger is. And these little tones on the back of his hand. And that highlight all around the edge. So now, sharpening the pencil. We do actually need a bit of shade in that nail, that would help. And now we're going to put in the real darks. This is still with the 4B. So we're back up on Voldemort's left eye. You've got that dark, and the fold in his upper eyelid comes right down, and you've got the dark right up into this crease in his head, and then you've got that V. I'm just going around the edges and just softening it slightly, but we've got to really increase the dark all the way around, leaving that highlight on his upper lid. Then we've got this shadow down the side of his forehead, some of these kind of liver spots on the back of his head. But you can see already that that eye has really become dark and menacing as Lord Voldemort is preparing to do the unforgivable curse. Coming up the top of his head, again above his nose here, we've got a dark shadow, and then that comes down to the crease line on the side, crease his nostrils. I'm just spinning the pencil just to accentuate, get a sharp point so as I can accentuate the black bits that I need, and just filling in around his teeth. Right in up onto that corner. His top lip. Coming down to the corner of his mouth. Got that shadow right across the top of his lip. I'm just indicating some lines. The way that the lines on your lip would go. Then shadow just across the bottom part of his lip. I'm using the very side of the pencil because we don't have, like we've got a hard edge in this crease on the side of his mouth. We don't want that for down here. So I'm using the side of the pencil and just putting on some little marks to indicate that darker shadow underneath his bottom lip and above his chin. Just some mottled bits in his chin. Here he's kind of got a load of acne marks. Should really have used moisturiser. Then we've got the dark coming up next to his hand, coming right the way down the side of his hand and his finger, all the way up. So just following the lines of his finger, building that shade all the way up the side of his cheek, and then bringing that shadow out a little bit. And then the same as we did here, side of the pencil, and I'm just increasing the dark softly with no sharp edges. Bringing that all the way down the side of his neck, to the top of the thumb there, creasing his neckline there, going to underneath his chin. There you see we've got more three-dimensionality now. Sharper little crease line underneath his chin. Now we've got to do the same as we did for his left eye for his right eye. So I'm really using the point to fill in and accentuate the dark. Inside his pupil and his iris, coming down to that fold, and the upper eyelid, that crease that's coming over as well, just slightly darkening that down. And the crease lines going up onto the forehead. We can just build up the tone down the side of what remains of his nose. Then slight soft. And that's looking pretty good. I hope you're enjoying this, drawing the Dark Lord. It is absolutely lovely. So now on his ear we need to come round behind his hand. We've got a nice dark patch that goes out underneath his ear. The bottom of his earlobe that comes up the side of his finger, the side of his head. Again, just dark spots Then we've got inside the ear canal where you got that D shape. Just pushing that up, filling in the dark, and then the curve of his ear. We've got a nice dark shadow with a slight reflected highlight inside. And then the curve comes down underneath. Again, we've just got some of those liver spots that we can indicate. Now, underneath his finger, we've got these creases. We've got a couple of little darker lines. Darken the edge down. We've got some creases there at the bottom of the finger. Darken them up. Again, the same with this finger. Right at the edge and the tip. Again, the same with the third finger, right at the tip. We can darken that. Crisp up the line coming underneath. So now I'm going to use one of the smudging tools, because gently I'm just going to fill in this shadow coming down to the top of that fingernail. Now here we've got this crease again underneath the finger, all the way down, sharp line to delineate the fingernail, some of the crease lines on his fingers, and then we've got these dark shapes now underneath his hand. And the creases, so we've got one coming off that hand there, we've got underneath, they go up, and that comes across this palm of his hand right up to this corner, and we've got a really sharp, tight bit of skin there, and then the second one underneath. So now for his thumb, we've got to really build, but remember, leave this highlight underneath. You can see there's a crease line. We've got to build the dark to make the hand stand out with the highlights. And we can only do that by increasing the shadows. So again, I'm pressing on really hard. And filling in all of that area underneath. Right the way up. And that's absolutely fantastic. Now look at that hand, just kind of leaping off the page. We got to build up the shadow right the way up to the tip there. That's looking rather fantastic. Now we've got the shadow right down underneath. The dark right underneath his hand. What do you reckon to that? So now we come back in on the top of his thumb with the putty rubber, and we indicate highlights. Now I'm dabbing inside, again just some little reflected highlights down here where we put all those crease lines in. we've got more reflected highlights underneath, and I'm just dabbing to indicate the folds on his actual skin. Now that here we've got a very strong highlight right on the finger, inside of the little finger. Now you can see that's now got a lot more shape and form, and on the creases on the top of his finger there. And then the third finger, the same. We've got strong highlights right along the top, and then the second finger, got a strong highlight on the top, just down the side, tip of his finger, and down these edges. Now that's looking very, very good. Right, so now if we come down and do the same as we've just done on this hand, on his right hand, we increase the shadows and the details that we need. So we've got underneath that fingernail, then we've got a curve coming down over onto the wand, and you've got that dark coming up onto Voldemort's wand. Now again, we can be quite impressionistic with this. We've just got the shapes that we're following. So right at the bottom we've got those little wiggly shapes that we put in. And then right down here, so we've got that curve that comes around, and the dark of the shadow coming onto his finger, from underneath the thumb there. And going up over the top of the knuckle. Got the dark line of the edge of the finger. Shadow line underneath the bottom of the wand. I'm just crisping the top up, but just very gently. Then we've got a couple of little internal shadows on the wand coming to the wand tip. That fold above. His shoulder. That's looking pretty groovy. I'm just darkening down around underneath the wand, just to make the wand stand out that little bit more. Now down on the finger, it's all nice big dark shadows. So I'm using the side of the pencil but indicating the folds in the skin, then filling in that deep dark shadow, and then the same underneath the fingernail. We've got crisp up the edge of that finger. We can darken that down a little bit. Same with the edge of that finger. And you can see how already that shadow is really giving a lot of form to the hand. And we just need to do it all for the two fingers that are underneath in the background. but you can fill in just very quickly. So just filled in that area there. And I'm going up, running close to the edge of that finger. Just very suggestive marks. You know, just filling in the shapes very quickly. And there you can see those two fingers in shadow have really become more solid and substantial. Now I can just deepen the shadows around and underneath them. And that is how you add that kind of detail quickly and impressionistically. And because you focus on Voldemort's face, this hand has got a lot of shape made by the shadows. And again, the same with this one. You're looking and you're seeing, you're going, yeah, that's a hand. And that's the joy of art, because you can be suggestive and impressionistic and indicate things and make people believe what they're seeing. And that is the effect of light and shade. So now we've got this crisp line on the edge of his cloak. Then we've got another one that coming down here. Then we can just put a couple of crisper lines on the edge of the cloak there. That's given us a lot of form very quickly. So now I'm just finishing off pushing the dark of that shadow around down on those fingers. Again, I'm now going to just indicate some highlights that would be the creases of his skin on his fingers, on that nail, skin going off to the edge. And just filling back in gently and carefully. But we need, again, a crisper line there on the top of his hand. Some highlights just on his cloak, and then this fabric on the top of his wrist. And we need that top of that knuckle. And that is looking rather spectacular. Now, I didn't think I was going to do this, but I am. So now we're going to completely cover Lord Voldemort's face. And I'm carefully but quickly going all down the side of his head. And we've got a nice dark shadow there underneath his ear. Now we've got to carefully go around these fingers, and all of a sudden this will make Lord Voldemort pop off the page. Now we've got to come along that wiggly line of that finger over that knuckle, coming down to the end of this finger with the nail, and that actually goes into the dark. The edge of the cloak. Now, really filled that in quickly. I'm not even going to try and attempt the smoke that's in the background behind his head, because that would take a little while. It wouldn't be too difficult, but I just don't want to overcomplicate things. I just want you to see how the effect of the dark will really make his head stand out. And there you can see already he's really starting to leap off the page. But I'm quickly going around the edge of my drawing and we can fill in all of Voldemort. This is absolutely lovely. And here we've got the edge of his collar. Going up to his neck. And we've got the edge of his thumb coming around this crisp nail. Coming down his thumb. Now, it's actually quite, like I say, we've got the smoke and it's quite wispy there, but I'm doing this dark so as he's not backlit at all, following the edge of his cloak. Now, down the side, and you can see already that's really starting to lift him off the page. I don't think I've ever really done this in one of my drawing lessons where I have covered the page. But this is absolutely fantastic, and Voldemort is definitely worth it. Just found a complete bit of putty rubber. Now, I actually have here a 4B pencil. Oh, there goes the tip. That's left in this pencil extender. Now, that's filling that in rather quickly. I hope you've enjoyed this. This is truly marvellous. Now again, I would probably use an 8B pencil for this. But that is rather spectacular. Can I get any more light? Ooh! Out of this 4B pencil. I'm trying to go in the same direction just so as it's fluid, which is why I did that big line all around his head. And now I'm just trying to increase it so as I don't go over his actual head. There we go. Filling down by his neck. I need to increase around that thumbnail. down over his shoulder. Just tidy up the shape around his ear. Very wibbly wobbly ear. I wonder if Voldemort knew he had wibbly wobbly ears. Oh, that was the last one. I'm not going to get any more off that. But at least I've used that stub. To actually fill in quite a lot. I can't get any more out of that. That's dead. So now we're back to this other 4B pencil. Now that's going to be small. That's going to be the pencil holder on the next drawing. But you do get through a lot of pencil. This is actually quite tough to do. I'm holding the paper to stop it from ripping off the page, and I'm really pressing on. So I will be stretching my fingers out after this. And I can really feel this in my elbow. But I'm just pressing on to get all of that tone down very quickly. But that's really, really fantastic. I don't think I have ever filled in an entire page. But that, I mean, just look at that now. Lord Voldemort is really staring off the page at you. When you first saw this image at the beginning, and you saw the complexity of the hands and the wand and the foreshortening of the wand, to actually think, oh, that's so complex, I'm not going to do that, but by breaking it down into simple shapes. This is something, if you look at the time lapses of the motorcycle races that I do, the complexity of the actual bikes with all of the engineering that's in them, and then all of the logos. So you've got the chassis, the engine, the wheels, the fairing, the mudguards, the actual graphics that is on, the design of the graphics that follow the shape of the fairing. It's all immensely complicated. And sometimes it takes me 2 to 3 days just to get the pencil line down on the canvas. And that's an immense amount of work. But if I don't do it, it won't look right at the end. You've got to spend the time laying your foundation. Which is why I so enjoy demystifying drawing and teaching you all these amazing techniques. Because they're really simple. It just takes a little bit of practice to actually make it work. And there we have, quite appropriately, the Dark Lord with a lot of dark 4B pencil all around him. Now I'm not going to smudge that at all, it doesn't need it. I really like that effect. That looks absolutely fantastic. And now finally, with a sharp pencil on a little bit of clean that is left, I can put, so I'm going to put down this end, Lord Voldemort, and on this side, Billy 2020. I know that you've all waited a long time for Voldemort, but there he is, he's done. I have really enjoyed that. You can fiddle and faff loads, you can add more detail to the hands, the face, everything, but that is truly one. I have so enjoyed that. I hope you have. Please do like and subscribe. Please do share this out with your friends. Have fun drawing Voldemort yourself, and I'll see you in the next drawing. Anyway, take care. Ta-da.